Picture the ultimate meal of luxury. You just got a massive promotion, or maybe you're proposing to your partner. You want to signal wealth, status, and celebration. What do you order? For decades, the answer has been lobster. Market price. It is the centerpiece of the seafood tower. It's what the rich guy eats in every 80s movie. It is the undisputed king of the ocean. But look at this thing. Really look at it. It's a giant underwater insect with claws. It's a bottom feeder that eats dead fish. It has eyes on stalks. If you found this crawling in your kitchen, you wouldn't eat it. You'd call an exterminator and burn the house down. So how did this happen? How did humanity perform the greatest culinary con job in history, turning a creature that was once considered literal garbage into a global symbol of wealth? It wasn't an accident. It was a marketing scheme born on the railroad tracks of the 19th century. To understand the con, you have to understand the before. If you lived in colonial New England in the 1600s or 1700s, you did not view lobster as a delicacy. You viewed it as vermin. Lobsters were so incredibly abundant that after a big storm, they would wash up on the beaches of Massachusetts in piles 2 feet high. They would rot in the sun and stink up entire towns. They were considered such a nuisance that their primary use was fertilizer. Farmers would grind them up and spread them on their fields. They were fed to pigs. Because they were so cheap and plentiful, they became the food of last resort for the lowest rungs of society. If you were eating a lobster, it meant you were destitute. It was poverty food. It was protein for prisoners and indentured servants. There are historical accounts from Massachusetts of indentured servants revolting against their masters. They weren't demanding higher wages. They were demanding a change in their diet. They actually had clauses written into their contracts stating that they would not be forced to eat lobster more than 3 times a week. Think about that. Eating lobster was considered cruel and unusual punishment. It was the 1700s equivalent of eating rats. They called it the cockroach of the sea, and nobody with any self-respect would be caught dead eating one. So, how did it change? The rebranding of the lobster didn't start in a Madison Avenue boardroom. It started here, the American Railroad. In the mid-1800s, the railways began expanding across the country, connecting the coast to the interior of America. Train operators needed a way to feed wealthy passengers in their dining cars, people coming from places like Ohio, Kansas, and Missouri. These passengers had money, but more importantly, they had ignorance. They had never seen the ocean. They knew nothing about the social stigma of New England coastal life. The railroad operators realized they had a massive opportunity based on what economists call information asymmetry. The seller knew the product was garbage, but the buyer didn't know any better. So the railroad started buying lobsters for pennies, because they were practically free, and serving them to wealthy inlanders in the dining cars. But the key was the presentation. They boiled them until they turned that brilliant, vibrant red. They served them on fine china with drawn butter. They marketed it on the menus as an exotic ocean delicacy. And the plan worked perfectly. The passengers from Ohio didn't taste poverty food. They tasted something rich, sweet, and exotic that they couldn't get back home. They loved it. They assumed that because it was being served in a luxury dining car, it must be expensive. The railroads were making an absolute killing on the margins. By the late 1800s, these wealthy tourists started arriving in cities like Boston and New York, and they did something shocking to the locals. They went into nice restaurants and asked for the lobster they had eaten on the train. Chefs were stunned. It would be like walking into a 5-star restaurant today and asking for a fried bologna sandwich. But these chefs were capitalists. They realized, Thoithyramus, that if these rich rubes were willing to pay top dollar for sea cockroaches, they would happily serve them. Suddenly, lobster started appearing on high-end menus, and this triggered a psychological phenomenon known as the Veblen effect, named after economist Thorstein Veblen. Usually, when the price of something goes up, demand goes down. But with a Veblen good, the opposite happens. As the price rises, people want it more, because the high price becomes a signal of status. The newly rich of the Gilded Age wanted to eat what excluded the poor. Once lobster became expensive, the elite embraced it because the poor couldn't afford it anymore. Ironically, this manufactured demand eventually led to the reality we have today. By the 1950s, lobster became so popular as a status symbol that we started overfishing it. What started as an artificial scarcity created by marketing became a real scarcity created by demand. The price skyrocketed, cementing its status as a luxury good forever. Today, when you order a lobster, you aren't just buying a meal. You are participating in a 150-year-old marketing scheme. Think about the ritual of eating it. They tie a bib around your neck like a toddler. They give you metal crackers and tiny forks to dig for the meat. It's messy. It's difficult. Anthropologists Thanois argue that the difficulty of eating it is part of the appeal. It's a performance. It shows you have the leisure time and the money to sit there and wrestle with your food. It's a long way from the indentured servant begging not to eat it on a Tuesday. Lobster is the ultimate proof that value is a hallucination. It doesn't matter what the product actually is. If you take a sea insect, put it on a nice plate, and charge $80 for it, humanity will line up to buy it. But when you peel back the layers, you realize that so much of our modern reality, from the engagement ring on your finger, to the cereal in your bowl, to the razor in your shower, was architected in a boardroom 100 years ago by a group of men who just needed to move more units. And that's why we're breaking down the history of advertising and how it built the modern world, one insecurity at a time.